Thank you so much, Mr. m.r.rangaswami, for joining this conversation. And I'm so excited about the book. It was much needed for our community and for the mainstream as well. So welcome to Fablife360.
Thank you. Great to be here with you.
Let's dive into the topic. How did the concept of the book come around? Was the idea brewing before that as well, prior to the elections? And it probably culminated into everything that happened right after the book? Was it like an epiphany moment, or how did this happen?
I think it was a combination. I think people were always looking to write a book in general because the community has come of age. We're 1% of the population, highest earning demographic, 7% of the doctors, 10% of the IT workforce, on and on and on, right? So this has been brewing, but really what happened was the editor, Tarun, calls me up one day in September. This wasn't that long ago, a year ago, and says, let's do a book. It's time to do a book, and let's title it Kamala Harris and the Rise of Indian Americans. And keep in mind, in September, Kamala Harris was not the vice president. The elections were just getting started. The campaign was going on, right? So the big risky decision was, should we call it that, do the book, and then Kamala Harris doesn't win, right? So it was a risk. It was a risk, So we went on the premise, let's see what happens. She might win, but it was no guarantee, right? As we saw. So that's kind of how it started. It started saying, hey, even if she doesn't win, maybe the book will still sell, but it's obviously done much better with her winning because it's brought attention to not just her, but the entire community. But the thought behind it was to show the depth of the community because, like I said, we're known as doctors, we're known as motel owners, we're known as IT guys, but nobody really knows the breadth and depth of our community and what we've done in the last 40, 50 years. And that's what the book wanted to show.
It was perfect timing.
Absolutely. And it's also very surprising, right? Because you don't know, for example, there's so many people of Indian origin in Hollywood. You didn't know there was so many Indian Americans in academia, in science, owning motels, young people who are doing incredible things, people who are philanthropists. So really, the book shines a light on so many parts of our community, and not just focus on any one section, if you will.
The academia part was a surprise for me as well. I was in awe as how many are listed and how many more are there that are not even listed, but they are there. You can list everybody. These are just few.
And the same thing in business. In business, there are 60 CEOs who are of Indian origin running Fortune 500 and Forbes 2000 companies. Everybody knows Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai, but they don't know 58 other CEOs just like them running biotech companies, consumer goods companies, banks, and so many different types of businesses. Yeah. So there's a surprise in every chapter.
1% of the population is Indians, and 60 are CEOs Fortune 500.
Yeah.
And what my observation was when I was looking at all the chapters, reading, I was like, these authors that you have in the book themselves are leaders, entrepreneurs, top journalists, and they're who and who. So, and I'm sure that must have been another difficult decision today, how to pick these people who will do justice to this, whatever topic they were picking up. So how was that criteria?
Yeah, I mean, there was two choices we had to make. One is how many chapters, what segments do we cover? We could have gone on and on. And the second was, who do you pick? So for the Kamala Harris chapter, for example, there was no one better than Aziz Hanifa, who was behind India Abroad as an editor for so many decades. He had talked to her, spoken with her, interviewed her. Who better to cover Kamala Harris than Aziz? Then we looked at the business leader chapter. Who better to do that than Raj Gupta, who himself ran a Fortune 500 company. Now is a chairman of a Fortune 500 company who's seen it all. And he was one of the early CEOs in the 1990s before, Satya and Sundar and all these guys came along. So for each one, we had to go dig in a little bit. But every time, we found incredible people willing to contribute. For example, Pradeep Khosla wrote the chapter in academia. He's the chancellor of a top 10 university, the University of California at San Diego. Who better to talk about academics than someone who's running a huge institution in its own right? So we were able to pick relatively, I would say, not easily, but the choices came pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. Yeah, it was interesting when he said that. Who would have thought when he moved to the country with an accent that he would be a chancellor for California, San Diego University? Like, seriously, that's unthinkable. And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, exactly. And so the way we laid out the book, and I can show you the book, it was going to be like 250 pages, but it ended up, right? Yeah, there it is. It ended up to be like 340 pages, right? Because there was so much content. Even though you edited it down, there was still so much good stuff, right? And so we meant it as a collector's item, so people can keep it on their table. People can give it to relatives, to their employees, to their board members. You feel proud that this is a book you can give to people.
It's a great gift. People are always looking for gifts, like what to give people nowadays, right? Everyone has everything and like what to do. This is I was thinking this is a great gift to give.
Absolutely.
So we are making progress, and share the advantages and strengths the millennials have that you didn't have in the 90s, early 2000s and 80s and even 70s for that matter. And of course, needless to say, social media is obvious, internet is obvious, but there are a lot more that everyone has now that it took you 200 days to do it, and now it's 2 minutes kind of work.
The advantage the next generation has is when we came initially, there were hardly many Indians in the universities we went to or colleges we went to. And so we had to kind of earn our way in there because they didn't know who we were and how we would perform in college and stuff. Now the myth is very positive, like, hey, take these Indian kids. They're hardworking. They do a great job, right? So the next generation of Indian Americans have that advantage that everybody thinks they're smart, they're hardworking, they're intelligent, and all that stuff. Now, with that comes a lot more, expectations, right? That they should actually be that good, and they should actually. That was one thing. The second thing is the previous generation was known as the model minority, meaning we came here, we got visas, we were legal, we worked hard, we stayed out of trouble. We never said anything about anything. We wouldn't go protest because, oh my God, we shouldn't be doing that, right? But this generation, having been raised and brought up here, they stand up. They'll go protest. They'll go demand things. And stuff. So that's a positive. I think the whole culture they've assimilated into the US says you stand up for yourself, stand up for your rights. So that's a positive thing that's happened recently, right? The other thing we're finding is the previous generation that came, like me, came with $8 in our pocket. So we had to save money and buy a house and put away money for our college education for our kids and stuff, right? Now these kids who are growing up are actually not as driven by money as we were, in a sense, right? So they are much more open to public service. So if you look at the Biden administration now, there are about 75 Indian Americans in the Biden administration, and the Indiaspora website has the whole list. It's called lists.indiaspora.org. And you'll have a list of all these people and look at them. Most of them are born in this country. These are Indian Americans born in the US. They're happy with a $50,000 job or something like that versus the Goldman Sachs job or something else at a much higher salary and much more income, right? So I think this generation is much more open to public service, working at an NGO, working in the administration, working on Capitol Hill. So I think they have a different purpose in mind than we had because we came as first generation immigrants. And we had to save money and put away that kind of stuff. This generation feels much more at home to say, let's go do things that we're passionate about, that make an impact. Less about money, more about impact.
Yeah, I think the first generation, the first priority for them was to fend for the family and pay the bills and give
Right.
good education to the children and have a decent house, decent job. And if at least those basic needs were met, they were good. And now all those sacrifices that they did, the second generation kids have that. They have they have the support of their parents that, they don't have to really worry about money as much.
Yeah, keep in mind, they've gotten out of college with no student debt.
Yeah.
Whereas most kids are getting out of college with a lot of student debt. So these kids are in a much better shape to take the risks, to say, I'll go work, for the Biden administration or for the attorney's office or whatever it is, and not make as much income because, I don't need to pay loans and I have enough to survive, which is good. I think it's a good thing that they're doing.
And they have American colleges as well.
Right.
They went to the American school system, whereas the first generation had the India school system. So I think that's also a big advantage for them,
Absolutely.
So in the end, I want you to give a message to all the young. Of course, we already touched on many topics, but in short, how would you like to give a message to the young Indians who are starting colleges, applying for colleges, or maybe in high school right now and careers? What do you want to say to them?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is, the traditional cliche is you want your kid to be a doctor or an engineer, right? I think right now with the kids in our community, they can be anything. Yeah, they could be a school teacher. They can be, a nurse. They could be a rocket scientist. They can, be an athlete. They can do whatever they want to do. So I think the key is follow your passion. You don't have to be just a doctor or an engineer anymore. And that's why in Diaspora, one of the things we've done is created a new group within Diaspora called Diaspora Next. So this is for the young community to come together on their own and come up with their own aspirations and their own value systems and where they want to go and be able to comfortably share that in a setting where their parents are not there, and they can talk to each other, meet each other. And so I think that's the kind of space we need to give them, is to find themselves and be whatever they want to be. And, the US gives you that opportunity to be whatever you want to be. And so, there's now a thriving LGBTQ community in the young generation. We never had that when we came to the US. So many things are changing. Multiracial marriages are happening within the next generation of our community. And all these things are wonderful to see, that we have become more of an accepting community than let's say we were 50 years ago, So it's a very positive thing. I'm very positive about the next generation, and they can do whatever they want to do. My message is do whatever you want to do that makes an impact.
That makes an impact. That's the main line. That makes an impact. The business is seva too, right?
Absolutely.
Do something that brings something positive to other people's life. Change the world in your own way, in whatever your comfort, what you're passionate about. Not necessarily comfort zone though, but what you're passionate about.
Correct.
Thank you so much. It was so wonderful knowing your journey, the Silicon Valley, the whole 40 years of Indians, where we are today, and about the Diaspora. What a wonderful organization that you have built. And I want to tell people to definitely check it out. It's by invite only. There's huge value to it. And it also gives back to the community in many ways. You network, you meet people. And one of the ventures that they recently did is the book that we have been talking about. So definitely check out the book right here.
All right.
Right here on this thing, Kamala Harris and the Rise of Indian Americans.
Thank you for having me, Seema. All the best.
All the best. Thanks.
Would love it if you click on the like and subscribe button below. I bring positive stories from celebrities and philanthropists from around the world, and stay updated with all things fab on my Fablife360 Instagram page. Also, If you are looking for something fun and inspiring to listen to, find my podcast Fablife360 on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.